have the pleasure of welcoming you all this morning to this great webinar on a beautiful sunny day. And the question poised on everybody's lips is COVID-19 the change maker for the legal sector? I personally hope so, as we have so many women in our community who are desperate to pursue their careers on a more flexible basis. And it's wonderful to have so many of you with you today. 2 to 3 days is on a mission to solve a social and economic problem that exists in our country and in our world, which is to advance women's careers on a flexible basis. If, as I said earlier, you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and either I will feed them to the panelists during the course of the discussion, or I will pick them up at the end. But let me now hand you over to Nigel Clark, who is going to chair this morning's discussion. Having spent the last 25 years in the legal sector, he is absolutely passionate about modernising the way it works for its people and their clients. So over to you, Nigel.
Thanks, Julia, and a big thank you to 2 to 3 days for hosting us and for picking law as an industry they want to have a discussion on. It's great. I'm Nigel Clark. I'm a director of Nexa Law in the UK. It's a new fast growth model where each of our lawyers works as a consultant to us, freelance model. One of a few out there, and I'm very privileged to be joined by a fantastic panel of senior executives from the legal industry. Claire Scott-Priestley, John Croft and Sarah Thompson, who hopefully you can all see and we'll be hearing from in a second. Sarah works for one of the leading law firm brands in the world. Claire is at one of the leading professional services firms in the world, and John leads one of the world's leading law companies. So you're hearing from the best. So I'm hoping we're going to, as much as Zoom will allow us, we're going to have an informal discussion. I'm going to fire a few questions. Hopefully you in the audience will fire a few questions at our panel, and we'll try and present it as a bit of a chat over lunch as much as we can do that and interrupt each other and as Zoom allows. Broad themes that we're going to be talking about today: the pace of change or the lack of pace of change in the legal sector over the last 10, 20 years. Does the legal industry, does the legal sector need to change, and if so, why? COVID-19's impact on the here and now, and what we think will be the impact post COVID-19, to the extent there is a post COVID-19. The current versus the future workforce in the legal industry in terms of diversity and flexibility. And if we have time, we'll probably, and no doubt, we'll touch on a bit of technology in the industry as well. I'm going to first of all ask the panelists to introduce themselves one by one and just tell us a bit about their role and their business. Claire, if all right, I'll start with you.
Sure, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thanks very much. I'm not sure, I feel a bit pressure now after Nigel's given us that esteemed introduction there. Anyway, I'm Claire Scott-Priestley. I'm a corporate partner at EY Law. I actually only joined EY in November last year from an international law firm. I was brought in to lead and build the M&A practice in what we call the private mid-market. So I basically advise clients on transactions, be they mergers and acquisitions, joint ventures, debt and equity investments, and generally provide corporate advice to businesses across their full life cycle. A quick background to EY Law. EY got their alternative business structure license in December 2014 and have been growing rapidly since then. We have 4 divisions in our law team. The first is legal advisory services that I fit into. We now have 130 lawyers in the UK who are all focused on servicing business clients. And globally, we are in 87 jurisdictions, which actually makes us the largest law firm by geography in the world. We also have legal function consulting services, which is a bunch of consultants who go into in-house legal functions to analyse their organisation and strategy and recommend improvements. We have legal managed services. That's 1,100 legal professionals globally who are delivering managed services to clients through 8 global delivery centres on a 24/7 basis. all tech enabled. And then our final part of our law offering is forensic and integrity services, where globally we've got 4,500 forensic professionals who are carrying out forensic investigations, e-discovery, forensic accounting, and things like that. So I think we're slightly unique in the market at the moment in that I, as an individual, even though I'm in legal advisory services, I don't just sell legal advisory services. We go to market with a full suite offering.
Thanks, Claire. Sarah.
Morning. This is the first doing this online. So I'm head of adaptive for Simmons & Simmons. Simmons & Simmons, if you're not sure, is an international Silver Circle law firm. I'm based in London and I'm responsible for heading up Adaptive. Adaptive is our firm's flexible resourcing business. We've been in operation since October 2014 and we're predominantly responsible for working with our clients to solve their resourcing issues on behalf of the firm. So we are a product of the firm where our clients come to us and ask for a solution, whether that is traditional legal advice, whether that is to solve a problem with technology. One of those problems is always resource, and Adaptive is that team that does that. So I've been leading that team for the past 4 years. It's very interesting times. I mean, this is the first, probably the biggest change to hit any of us in the long term as to how people work. And we are probably one of the businesses at the forefront to support our clients to do that. So I'm based in London. My team, I think most of them are actually logged in to listen to this actually, which is lovely, are based in London and Bristol. And our consultants are all lawyers. We do, however, have a couple of legal project managers that we also put in our clients as well. And all of our consultants are independent consultants in a relationship with the firm.
Sarah, can I ask you to turn up your volume a bit?
Oh, yes.
You're moving away from your mic. Some of it wasn't.
Oh, okay. My volume is up. Is that better?
That's
okay.
Yeah.
That's
I'll
better.
stay. I won't move.
Move. Freeze.
Freeze.
And finally, the third member of our panel is John Croft. John.
Hello. I'm John. I guess I feel obliged to say that I've been on a number of panels in the legal industry over recent years, and as a straight white middle-aged bloke, I am delighted that I'm the sort of diversity candidate on this panel today. So thank you for that. And I know that sort of might sound amusing, but it's serious. I for years and years used to sit on panels of these old white men sort of deciding what all the problems in the legal sector were, which I think was obviously part of the problem in the first place. So my name is John Croft. Our company is Elevate, and as Nigel said in the introduction, we are not a law firm and we're not a law department, but we describe ourselves as a law company. So our sort of aim in life is to help law firms and law departments with practical ways to improve sort of efficiency, quality, and outcomes. And we do that in a similar way to the way Claire described her business, which is we have consulting, we have managed services, we have flexible resourcing, and we have legal technology as well. We are a relatively new company. We started about 7.5 years ago, and we have around 1,500 people globally, spread quite evenly around the world.
Thanks, John. I'm going to kick off the discussion with a question for you, John, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Is it fair to accuse the legal industry of being resistant to change and slow to modernise?
Yes, I personally think so. And law has been around for a long time, and but then so have lots of other industries. And so why have other industries been sort of quicker to modernize? And I've always felt that one of the reasons is because of what lawyers are trained to do and then paid to do, which is you present them with a situation and their job is to look at it and can tell you what could possibly go wrong. What is the risk involved in any situation? That's why you go to a lawyer. And therefore, as somebody whose job for the last 20 years has been talking to lawyers and coming up and presenting them with new ways of doing things. You know, hey, instead of getting a whole bunch of Oxbridge grads to do this, why don't we, you know, who've never done it before, why don't we use this team in India who are, you know, 10-year seasoned qualified lawyers who understand and have a process. Well, here's 400 reasons why that's not going to work. Hey, instead of, you know, looking at these 50 million documents that no human beings could do, why don't we run it through you know, some technology and use some technology to start doing some first cuts of it? Well, here's a lot of risk as to what could possibly go wrong. So I think that I can only assume that is why the sort of change has come slowly, because if you look at other, you know, and they say, well, you know, what we do is serious and what we do is important and has consequences, and all of those statements are true. But I do liken it to other professional services where all of those things are also true. And I think if you look at an example I was talking to someone about the other day is when I first got my first job as a grad trainee and I was 22, I worked for a big company and we had a finance department. And if you walked into that finance department, there were rows of people sitting at desks with calculators with little rolls of paper in them. And they were adding up numbers. And then you rip off the bit of paper, share it with the person sitting opposite you, and then you check that other person's. And that is the way, and this was a publicly traded London Stock Exchange company, that's the way we tracked our numbers and reported our numbers. And this was back in the 80s. If you walked into a company today and they were doing that, you'd think they were absolutely crazy, because there's sort of Excel at the very base level, and then there's a kind of SAP or Oracle or something that will, you know, do all of your gap accounting and all of that. Of course you use technology. And yet, if you were to walk into a legal department of many organizations today, the legal equivalent of people sitting with a calculator and then checking each other's work is the way a lot of work is delivered. It's delivered manually, and it's delivered because people sort of think about it and want to have an opinion. And there are always going to be examples where that expert advice is the right way to go about buying legal services. And I would say, if that expert advice is in the very top of the pyramid, there is also a huge chunk of work under that little peak of the pyramid where, yes, it's got to be right, and yes, it's got to be done sort of efficiently, but doing it manually is not the right way. And that there are processes and there are technologies and there are ways of delivering that same outcome. And it's the outcome you need to focus on, and it's just the sort of steps that you have to go through to get to that outcome that has been very slow to change. You know, and it is changing. Of course, it's changing. But I think if you look across the professional services, that legal has been one of the slower ones.
And is it right if I said that it's probably, in my view, seen more change in the last 2 to 5 years than probably in the 30 years before that, and we're beginning to see real acceleration of change? Did you get that, John?
Sorry, something crackled and I didn't hear the question.
The pace of change, my view is in the last sort of 2, 3, 4 years, there's probably been a real increase in the acceleration of change in legal.
Yes, there has recently, and but I still think there are relatively few people that are really doing things differently. The law departments, the in-house teams are sort of coming to terms with this, and some of the law firms are coming to terms with this, but we've noticed as a law company that the market has kind of bifurcated, and I think there's certainly a small number of firms, and you know, my co-panelists here I would include on that, obviously, of people that are really looking at trying to do stuff differently. But it is still the minority and not the majority. So I don't see kind of everyone starting doing a little bit of technology and then everyone doing a bit more. I see a few people doing having a go. And I think that's part of the problem. Having said that lawyers look for risk, part of doing something new is we're going to make, there's going to be mistakes. Stuff is, doing something new, you have to try and fail. And, in other businesses, people say, sort of move fast and break things, and, all of these other kind of things, that failure is good because we're learning. And that sentiment appears to be very frightening to lawyers. So they'd rather not try to change anything because they don't want to risk failure, because that's sort of an unacceptable outcome. So I think there's a small number of firms, certainly that we work with, and I'd be interested to hear what the other panelists' views on this are, but we work with a smaller number of people that really are trying to kind of grind through how all of these new things work in a sort of as safe an environment as you can. And then once it's there, it will grow. And I think then then there's proof, and most firms don't want to be the first person to do something, or even the second, but they kind of don't want to be the 10th. So there's a small number of firms that really are kind of moving the dial. And then I think what is likely to happen, and we've seen happen already, is that once something like that, I mean, so take something like, I don't know, digital signatures, those are reasonably commonplace these days, and yet it wasn't that long ago that lawyers wouldn't use email. And I actually, even today in 2020, I know partners in London, actual real people, who have their assistant print out their emails and bring it and put it on their desk,
So do I. Thank you. I certainly think on this panel as well that there wouldn't be any argument that we think the legal sector needs to continue to change and modernise and that sort of stuff. Let's bring the lockdown into the discussion now, and COVID-19. Claire, how different has your job really been in the last 4 weeks?
Well, it falls into sort of a couple of different categories, I'd say. My job is largely the same, but the way in which I'm doing it is different, obviously, which is no doubt the same situation for everybody. If I look at sort of internally and externally, so internally, our primary focus following lockdown was to look after our team. So we've managed to successfully move 18,000 people in the UK to remote working, which is a hell of an achievement in reality. And so for our legal team, really for making sure that our team were okay and that they had all the resources they needed to be able to do their job, but also more importantly, that they were coping okay. So, our team is made up of a variety of individuals, as it will be the same for everybody. And somebody who lives on their own in a small flat in London with no outside is going to have a very different experience to someone who lives in the country with access to a big garden, who's going to have a very different experience to someone where you've got 2 working parents and 2 children, and you're trying to do your jobs and homeschool at the same time. So really, I think what's happened there is people have had to be more flexible about how they actually do their jobs. And that flexibility comes about in various different ways. For the working parent example, they may be tag teaming it. So one does the morning, one does the afternoon, or they may get up extra early and work before the kids wake up, or work in the evening after the kids go to sleep, or whatever. But I think there have been all sorts of different actual challenges that I personally have experienced, which is what we're doing right now. I'm spending hours and hours in my day talking to my computer. And I'll tell you something, it's not very nice looking at yourself the whole time for a start. But it means that you don't actually get up and move. So sometimes we use Microsoft Teams, which I have to say has been absolutely phenomenal. And sometimes I'll do Teams calls on my mobile just so that I can get up and walk around at the same time, so they're not actually stuck at the same place. And the other thing is that it's hard, I think, for people to sort of switch off and to define their working hours. You know, you get to sort of like whatever time it is in the evening that you'd normally leave the office, and just because, oh, another email just pings in, you just think, well, I'll just do this, or I'll just do that, or you go off and do something else, and then later in the evening you just think, oh, I'll just come and check this. So we've been very careful to try and work with our teams to make sure that they are outlining those parameters and sticking to them for their own health and well-being. And then, of course, just that whole lack of normal human interaction that you would get, you know, the water cooler chat. So we're doing a lot more, you know, virtual coffee mornings. I do team drinks with my team once a week on a Thursday. We've had some quite entertaining concepts about how to make it a bit different each week. The first week, one of my partners actually used to be a DJ. So everyone sent in their music requests, and he DJ'd them in the back, and we had to identify the person in the team who'd sent in the request. So that was quite a good giggle. So, and then by the fact that, you know, as we were talking earlier about, your kids just walk past in the background and this, that. So you're actually getting to know people, both clients and your team, on a much deeper, more personal level, which I think is a massive benefit. But yeah, we've been primarily focused on our people. I'm proud to say so far at EY, we have done no furloughing. We have made no pay cuts, and we have made no redundancies. And the primary aim of our business is to be able to survive C-19 without doing any of those things. So that in itself is, you know, quite a challenge. Sorry, Nigel, were you going to ask something?
Yeah, let me jump in and ask you a follow-up. So two follow-up things here. How effective have you and your team been able to work during the lockdown? And to put you on the spot, when we're in a post-COVID-19 world, what would you take from this and carry on doing?
Actually, not difficult at all. Team have been extremely effective. And I think that comes from a couple of things. Firstly, at EY, we work very flexibly in any event. So from one day to the next, I don't generally know where my team are going to be. Our offices are all open plan and everybody hot desks. So the rules are, if you haven't found a desk in your working area, so for us within the law team, by 10 o'clock in the morning, you might find yourself sitting next to someone from, you know, consulting or tax or whatever, because some random's going to come and sit next to you, which is actually great because first you get to meet loads more people, but also it develops that relationship of trust between the employer and the employee. And I think this is one of the most critical things about flexible and remote working, is to have that trust, because this is the way that we opt anyway. So whereas, you know, I know in my old, it was very much sort of jackets on the back of the chairs. And if you weren't in the office, everyone would be like air through their teeth going,
oh.
Just lost Claire for a second there, I think.
Yeah.
Nothing that we've done, I promise you.
Feel better that it wasn't just me.
I might, Sarah, let me bring you into this conversation.
Okay.
Adaptive, you're built to work in a remote environment anyway, your team. That's what they do, isn't it? Or they're clients as well?
Yeah, yes and no. I think the one thing about adaptive is that flexible working doesn't necessarily just come into location and hours and days of weeks. It is also in terms of different styles of work as well. So if you look at adaptive, there's not a lot of consultants that work in the same way. They work differently. And one of the things when we are talking to our clients, if they need an adaptive consultant, it is to find out from them what the project is and what they need them to do and how flexible they can be, and then matching that with the right consultant. So yes, some of our consultants are flexible workers. They work on time-specific projects. Some of them are a little bit more present in the office because that's how they like to work, or that's the project that they're working on, or the person they're working with. So it really is a mixed bag. But I think the key thing is that our adaptive consultants are used to working differently. So, and my team would be exactly the same and thinking differently. So our consultants, the transition from them from being maybe in an office to working from home, it wasn't too much of a struggle, because for us it's all about service delivery, and it's knowing who your client is, so them knowing who their client is and what service they're delivering wherever they are. So it hasn't come without its struggles though, because similar stuff, people have had caring responsibilities, they are self-isolating on their own, so being on their own is an issue as well, not just necessarily having children and different hours and different deliverables, and also just same thing, sitting in the same spot every day and working the same hours and seeing the same faces. It's a challenge. So so flexibility, they've been able to transition to it pretty quickly. And actually key for us on our clients, the messaging we've been hearing from our clients with our consultants is that business continuity is key. And our adaptive consultants have been incredibly great at making sure that business continuity is the first.
Do clients, and obviously in this webinar and in this environment, we're talking about business legal services, we're talking about corporate clients. Do clients care how their lawyers work?
I think with everything, it depends who the client is. It depends who the client is. Most of our clients, I think the fact that they're even coming to Adaptive and working with a firm like Simmons is that they're usually asking for something to be delivered differently. And as a result, they're usually pretty open-minded to how they work. You are, however, going to get still leaders who like to see their teams, who like to have their teams on agreed hours, who like to know what people are up to. So you can't take that away. It's not necessarily the client, the company they're working with. You're still going to have individuals that are a bit slow to change. I think with all of this, it's made everyone put their money where their mouth is. For the last few years, we've spoken about agility and work-life balance and trust and people working in different ways and mental health and diversity and all of this. This has actually forced the conversation on all of those points, if we take it just away from flexibility, to make those things real. You know, I think I'm having conversations with partners at the moment that, let's be honest, 6 weeks ago, our conversation would never have started with how are you feeling? It might have been how are you, but not how are you feeling? Completely different. So it's changing, it's making all of those things that us as law firms or law businesses or any companies have spoken about for a really long time, it's making them real, and we have to live and breathe them now. So I think for the most part, flexibility in who engages with our consultants, yes, but it also depends on the individual themselves, the leader themselves.
Thanks. I think Juliet's got a couple of questions from
we've had some great questions come in. One's from a lady called Alison. What would more flexible working mean for the current training model in private practice, where the intention is trainees absorb through sitting through partners and SAs sitting in meetings, etc.? I don't know who's the best.
Sarah, do you want to try and field that one?
I think it's a hard one. And, you know, we even talk about it in our team, is that, you know, my team can work where they want, with whoever they want. But look, we all know, even from being juniors ourselves, that a lot of our learning comes from osmosis, from sitting next to somebody, from hearing them on the phone, from having that quick chat about something going on. I don't think you'll ever get away, my opinion is, the training model where you will have to have individuals predominantly in an office. But it's something that they're going to have to think about. I also think a lot of us have put a lot of focus on a separately different thing, millennials and juniors, about how they want to work remotely. You know, we can't underestimate, a lot of them live in shared accommodation. Actually, they're working in bedrooms at the moment. If I look at my juniors in my team, they are desperate to get back into an office. They're desperate for human contact, desperate to learn off people. So I think actually it might not be the flexibility that actually the trainees would be wanting. I think you'll find the majority of them would want to be in an office, want to be in teams. They're ambitious, they want to learn, and there is something that comes from working in an office, being around people, that you cannot replicate at home.
I think in law, and when I started, it was very linear. There was one path and there was one way of doing things. And I think all we would ask of the industry is that there's different ways of doing stuff. And so for a trainee, they should experience all different ways and they should be encouraged. Juliet, did you have another?
Sorry.
Sorry, John. Go on, John.
I was only going to say, I agree with a lot of what Sarah was saying, but we are, you know, this couple of weeks is so extreme. You know, we've gone from everyone in an office to everyone, you know, in a bedroom or at home or whatever. So that, that's just a moment in time. But and I agree that it is, if you were a young trainee, to do that sort of remotely through Zooms for the osmosis point you well made. But I suppose what we feel is that that doesn't mean that it's completely binary. There's one thing or the other. That there is some kind of some middle ground here. Pre-COVID, we had about 40% of us kind of working from home, 60% in the office, which means that there are offices. I've worked from home since 2003. We've got an office, and I can walk to it from here. I don't never go to it, but I don't go to it every day. So I go when I need to spend time with other people. So I think there's a question of just kind of some flexibility. And I think that some of these other points that have been brought up, the whole Claire's point about sort of jackets on the back of the chair and sort of presenteeism and all of those kinds of things just start becoming unnecessary if there is a degree of flexibility, which is, I personally think, is good for the end customers. But it's also good for the firms. It's good for the real estate, and it's good for the people as well, the lawyers. You're absolutely right. Lots of people asking how you're feeling. Nobody normally asks how lawyers are feeling, and I think if you did, I suspect that most people don't, because they don't want to know the answer, because it's pretty exhausting and can be quite miserable sitting in a very expensive building in London EC2 somewhere from it's dark when I got there, it's dark when I get home, and I have to put on a tie and black shoes and a suit and all these. There's nothing wrong with those things, but if that's the only way that I personally don't believe that's the only way that this work can get delivered. There is a time to put on a tie and a suit and go and sit in a meeting room. Of course there is, but 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, day in, day out, could some of this work be done from home? Could some of this work be done remotely, or the hot desking that Claire was talking about? So I'd be terribly disappointed if everyone went back from COVID when it's all over to the whole way. Does that mean that we're all going to spend all of our time, introducing our dogs to each other and our kids to each other? No, I really hope our kids go back to school, but I think some element of sort of middle ground and some sort of sea change movement, which is just attitudinal, because I think what hard and challenging as it is at the moment, with everyone having to sort of school their kids and worry about food and health and all, once that's all gone, I think we have been able to prove that nothing really fell over. People still did manage to kind of do their work. So now we've proven that, and we don't all want to be at home the whole time. Maybe we could ask, do we all want to be at an office the whole time, and is that necessary, or is there some middle ground somewhere?
I agree.
Do you want to fire us another question?
Yeah, we've had a question from a lady called Gemma, who wants to know what the panel think about the impact of C-19 will be on outsourcing by firms, whether this is a business process such as HR and tech, or in the legal way. Do you think law firms will outsource more? I don't know is that one for John?
Well, Claire, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah. When you're saying, do you think law firms will outsource more or clients will outsource more?
The question has come from law firms, but it could well be clients. I think it's will people who need these services done outsource more as a result of knowing that it can be done remotely, not inside a law firm?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot more outsourcing. I mean, I think that's the way that the market was going anyway. Back to what John was explaining earlier on, I very much agree with him. I mean, lawyers by their very nature are risk averse and literally change allergic. It's horrific. But they are also extremely arrogant, and I'm allowed to say that because I am one. And so one of the things that I think historically has happened within traditional law firms is they've been reluctant to bring in non-lawyers, external consultants, to advise them on their business strategy and to assist them to adapt their business model and to grow. And that, I think, is to their detriment, because I think you do need to change to survive. And certainly the more traditional law firms, I think, are really going to struggle if they don't. And one of the ways that they will improve their business model is to do a lot of outsourcing. I mean, for example, the way that we operate right now, we outsource some of our business work as well. So, for example, some of the more standardized, commoditized type work that we find it hard to really make a profit on, we use our own legal managed services to deliver that work. So the client is still getting the same service delivery, but we're actually, as a business, making more money on it. So a lot of law firms have set up their own global delivery centers, et cetera, for that purpose. I think you'll probably see a lot more of that, but then also clients will be probably following the same sort of model. I think there'll be an increase in legal managed services.
And I think also it depends on the law firm, because it's really easy to put all law firms into the same bucket, right? So if you look at our law firm, and I always speak favorably about Simmons, but if you look at Simmons over the last couple of years, I mean, the big word in law firm has been innovation, right? Everyone, if you looked at business plans for law firms 5 years ago, I don't think any of them would have said the word innovation. And I think in the last 2 years, the innovation's been across everything. So if you look at Simmons, for instance, I think there has been a recognition that things need to be done differently in some departments, and that clients have different problems that they need solved. So if you look at us as a business who've never had a history of making acquisitions, we bought Simmons Wavelength last summer of legal technologists, recognising that actually that's a problem that our clients need to be solved. So yes, the outsourcing, but there is a bit of insourcing first, I think, on some of these things, and bringing in the right people. If you look at all of our products, so Adaptive, our innovation team, our Wavelength team, they're pretty much run by non-lawyers who just think differently. And then we collaborate with the lawyers to bring them in onto different projects. And as a team, we're able to deliver services. So I think for us and our firm, I don't know if it is outsourcing. It could at the moment just be actually insourcing and developing new products and new services and delivering those services as a whole.
I want to switch tack a little bit here and talk about our people. And given what 2 to 3 days do, I want to talk about women for a second. Claire, I'm going to fire this one at you because I've known you the longest. Why do more women than men qualify as solicitors in the UK, but have such little representation in the senior roles in legal?
I love it. You've known me the longest here. Give me the hardest question. Thanks for that, mate. Thanks. I mean, it's true. It's a fact. Over the last 30 years, women comprise 2/3 of entrants into the legal industry, but only 25% are partners in private practice, and only 15% of those attain leadership positions. So it is an enormous challenge. So much so that Christina Blacklaws, who is the current Law Society president, chose women in leadership in law as one of her themes when she actually took on the presidency of the Law Society. And they've done a lot of work in this over the last couple of years. And through their research, they found that really the main barriers to progression are overwhelmingly unconscious bias. Now, of course, unconscious bias is a really, really hard thing to explain and to identify, both in yourself and in other people. But I personally believe that it is the primary problem, and that firms need to do a lot of training in people so that they're able to recognize unconscious bias and try and counter it, but also take other steps to try and address it. So, for example, if you imagine unconscious bias in recruitment, I mean, the way that the theory goes is that people generally recruit somebody who looks like them, has the same experience of them, that they feel automatically comfortable with. And in that situation, with the traditional model of law firms being much more male dominated, you would expect more men than women to be promoted through the ranks. And so therefore, there are different things that you can do to try and counter this. For example, having an actual a gender champion who is part of all the recruitment process and is there to specifically question every step that's made during the recruitment process from a gender balance perspective, to actually set targets to achieve greater gender balance. So, for example, EY have got a target that 40% of our partnership will be female and 20% BAME by July 2025. And I know for a fact that EY take this incredibly seriously. Diversity and inclusion is one of their key strengths, and it was something that really attracted me when I decided to join them. In fact, I was almost a benefit of that D&I policy when I joined. Just as a quick aside, at EY every year we do a people pulse survey. So we take the mood of our staff and ask them, you know, what are they happy with, what are they unhappy with? And within the law team, one of the pieces of feedback, certainly from a lot of the females in the group, was that they look up and they see no female role model. And this was taken very, very seriously by the partners in the legal team, and they said, you know, we need to recruit a female partner because that will assist us to be able to build up our internal talent. So they specifically instructed a search for a female partner, and I was quite horrified actually by what came out of this. Firstly, the headhunters who were doing the search analysed female corporate partners in the City of London, and the total amount of people they identified was 40, which I think is quite horrific among the hundreds of corporate partners that there are out there, but is a fine demonstration. So anyway, you know, I've ended up where I am, and I'm testament to the fact that they do take it very, very seriously. But other things I think are you can increase mentoring and sponsorship opportunities. Also reverse mentoring I think is a really interesting opportunity. I think you need to engage men in the equality debate. I think the leadership of the business needs to support equality and to deliver that message right the way through the ecosystem, and particularly to the middle management, because I think that's often where you get a bit of a problem, is with the middle management, to ensure that the drive for equality is felt throughout the whole ecosystem.
That's okay. That's clear. Thank you. Let me go to Juliet. Juliet, do we have questions on gender?
Long hours. Fact,
again, that's,
you know, Claire, when you and I had a chat yesterday, you know, I loved in a really sad way your story about you taking a photograph of the Thames at 10 o'clock at night, and then you took a photograph of the same point of the Thames at 6 o'clock in the morning when you were coming back from work, not a night out on the town, from work. Surely, you know, the reputation that you don't leave your office until the deal is done. Another law firm told me that it's the real male culture that you keep you break the opposition by doing the negotiation at 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
Isn't that one of the biggest killers for women pursuing their careers?
I think it is. I think certainly when we talk about law, it very much depends on which area of the law you specialise in. So corporate is generally thought to be one of the most challenging areas for unsociable hours because of the nature of the way that deals work. And you're right, you know, law firms do play tactics with each other. You know, they'll sit on a draft document ready to send it at 5:30 in the afternoon on a Friday so that they ruin the weekend of the people on the other side. This is, to my mind, just comes down to attitude. You know, I don't play those games. Life's too short, you know, and strangely enough, I still get instructed. My clients still want to work with me. I think these days as well, when we talk about increased flexible working, remote working, there are lots and lots of different ways. I mean, I attend many less all parties negotiations in person these days than I used to 10 years ago. I think it's the way that the industry is changing. Sometimes these things are unavoidable because sometimes for the client's purposes, they have a ridiculous deadline for a good reason and we just have to accommodate it. But I think it's getting less bad than it was.
Can I ask?
In my experience.
Julia, go on.
Can I just jump in? There have been a couple of people who've asked the question on the same theme. Maybe this is one for John. How are your clients as a whole responding to COVID-19? Because if clients are happy with the more flexible way of working and more remote working, then surely if the clients are happy, then you as lawyers, as service providers, have to move with what the clients want. So
Yes.
what from, you know, from the coalface, what are the clients wanting from their lawyers?
I like to think that kind of forward-looking, we call them customers rather than clients, but forward-looking customers should want outcomes from their legal service providers. And it sounds a very easy one-word thing to say, but if you take that simple premise and you then kind of work back from that outcome, then everything we've talked about today sort of falls into place. So in the old days, if I'm the general counsel of a big publicly traded company and I'm buying my competitor, a big M&A deal, I need some legal representation. The only way in the past that I've had to do this is I go to the City of London, to the EC postcode, and I go to one of, I don't know, a dozen or so big marble buildings with huge entrance foyers and lots of fine art, which is filled with mainly men who are all wearing dark suits and black shoes and ties, and were all probably educated in the same less than half a dozen universities. And they will deliver the work the way they choose to deliver the work. And that is the way that it's been done for 100 years. So this idea of and so you can imagine trying to change, and then when we said earlier, lawyers don't like change for all the reason we talked about, trying to change that from the inside out is almost impossible. But at Elevate, we're not a 100-year-old law firm. We were a brand new company that didn't exist, and we sat down one day with a piece of paper and said, how can we do this differently? And we covered all of the topics we talked about today. And our thought was, if you started that conversation with the GC saying you want to buy another company, what is the outcome you're looking for? Well, the outcome is I want to own my competitor, and we need and you know, to do that we need we need certain numbers of legal documents. We need, you know, you could write down a bit of paper all the things that you need. If you say that is what I need, and as long as the deal is done by the 5th of July, and I'm happy with the price, kind of and there's no risk. Should you really care whether you're in London, whether you're in a particular building, whether the people doing the work are male or female, or gay or straight, or black or white, or any other type of sort of mix of people? Should you care whether it was done at 4 o'clock in the morning or at a decent time? Should you care whether it was humans doing this part of the work, or whether a computer actually reviewed these 50,000 contracts and drew out the clauses? So all of the things that we do, Elevate, we think, if you start with the outcome and you say, I'm going to deliver you the outcome you want, if I deliver you the outcome you want, do you care how I do it? We hope the answer would be no. Now, everyone's on a kind of a journey.
I think they do care though, and if you look at how much clients have put an emphasis, I think you're right. I think the ultimate outcome is, what is the problem that the client's asking for, and can you solve it? And it's law firms having a variety of different services that can solve different problems for clients, right? And that can be flexible. But I think on that point, when you said about diversity and who delivers the work, I agree on location. But I think clients, we've certainly seen as a firm, there's been a huge impact on our clients asking us. If you talk to my responsible business colleague, her whole days at the moment are spent talking to clients about the work that we are doing for them and who is our workforce, that it is a diverse workforce. So Adaptive, we are the only ones of any of our competitors, so other law firms, that have done a diversity survey of adaptive consultants. We include our adaptive consultants in our gender pay reporting. It is very important to us to do that, because that stuff is important to our clients.
Well, that is great.
That was the only thing that I was saying that I would challenge you on, is the diversity point, because clients do care about that.
They do, and it's fabulous that you're doing it. But all I was saying was that they do, and yet you are one of very few firms. If the statistics that Claire was saying at the beginning of 25% partners and the 40 corporate partners in the world is the reality today. So we've got this funny situation where your clients wants a diverse group of people delivering the work, and the group just isn't there at the moment. So it's kind of, so I think we're all in violent agreement, but it's just a question of what can we do to break this deadlock?
Yeah, I agree with both. I agree both. If I could just say quickly, Nigel, I agree with both John and Sarah in this regard. I think what's really happening is we are shifting from a client perspective, from a seller's market to a buyer's market. So what has happened in the past is that law firms dictated to clients, you want to do this, you want to achieve this outcome, this is how you do it. And clients had no choice but to buy their services in the way they were describing. Yeah. Exactly as John has highlighted, we're now shifting to a buyer's market, and clients have much more options available to them about how they can deliver and get through that process so that they end up with their end result. So I do agree with John there. I also agree with Sarah that and that's one of the other things that I could have said earlier when we were talking about diversity, is that we are seeing increasing amounts of requirements from clients to be diverse and to stand behind what we're saying. So these firms who talk the talk and don't walk the walk are going to get found out very, very quickly, because clients are saying, we will not work with you if you are not demonstrating this, this and this. And for example, it's taken so seriously, EY, I got asked recently if I would be the lead partner in relation to a request for proposal. We were pulling together a response, and for a very large client, still outstanding. And when they actually had an initial meeting with the client, the GC was female and the COO who would be running the situation was female, and we were presenting a largely male group. And one of my lead partners just said, this is wrong, we are not going to work here, and reached out to me and said, Claire, I really need you to get involved in this, and I would like you to lead this, because it's the only way we're going to look like the client. Now, what's incredible to me still about that would never have happened at my old firm, because that partner would have said, oh, this is all about me, and wouldn't have cared about the client. So, things are changing and they are being driven by the clients.
I definitely think that COVID-19 will change the legal sector again. Like the global financial crisis, for me, put so much pressure on the traditional law firm model that it changed some cultures, it changed some behaviors. I'm conscious of time. We've got 3 minutes to go, really. I'm going to put each panelist to give me 3 things in 60 seconds on what COVID-19, or I don't want to use the phrase new normal, but what are we going to learn from this, and what 3 things will change for the legal sector and needs to change? Sarah.
Oh gosh, I was hoping you weren't going to go with me first. I think it's going to do exactly what you said. I think it's going to continue to ask us to deliver things differently. I think it's going to look at all the things that I think we were doing before COVID-19, which was business partnering and solving problems differently and listening to the client and being more flexible and delivering things differently. I think it's going to continue that. If I look at flexible working, and how law firms are working now and how our legal clients are working now, there's been a huge uptake. I mean, the last 5 to 10 years has been incredibly different. I think that will continue. I think we are in a really, really great position now where the alternative market is now mainstream, that there is alternative career paths. A portfolio career is seen as very favourable. These lawyers that we deal with are exceptional. The quality of work that they do, their breadth of experience, how they deliver that, it's very client focused. And I think we'll start to see on the alternative workforce, not just sort of the contractor market, but potentially, crowd workers, which has already affected other business groups, other industries, I suppose. The gig workers, where they're paid to deliver a piece of work. I think all of that will become a little bit more mainstream. And our clients themselves are reducing to core headcount, and this alternative model is seen as a way for them to continue to deliver their business differently with the right people that can come and dip in and out of projects, have flexible working, and still work on really good quality work. I think it's not going to be at the moment incredibly different to what we've been doing, but it may be accelerated.
Claire, 3 things post-COVID?
Totally agree. I think the biggest impact is that COVID-19 is going to accelerate the change that was coming in any event within the legal industry. I think both within law firms and with clients, we're going to see a massive increase in flexible and remote working and distance learning. I think, again, within law firms and within clients, we're going to see a larger investment being made in technology and innovation, so increasing digitization, automation, giving clients the ability to self-serve. So effectively a combination of human capital and technology in service delivery. And finally, I think we're probably going to see clients are giving more respect to the legal implications within their businesses. So historically, law has always been a bit of a necessary evil with everything that they do. They don't really want to have to consult with lawyers because they're always trying to put the brakes on everything, etc., etc. But because of this uncharted territory, everybody has been forced to look at the legals in every single aspect of the business. And I think that may bring it to the forefront of businesses' minds, and that will continue in the future. But I think, in summary, I think we're probably going to end up talking about BC and AC being, before COVID-19 and after COVID-19, because I think it's going to be that much of a step change.
Same as we did for pre-GFC and post-GFC, right? John?
Very similar. I think that I would be really disappointed if in a few weeks' time everyone just raced back to doing things the way they did in the past. In the same way, just sort of outside legal, how we treat the planet and how we fund the NHS versus, within legal of how we, everything we've talked about today. So I hope that the change continues apace. Secondly, yes to the flex/remote working, just the sort of the way work is done, the same outcome, but different ways of doing it. And I suppose the third part of that is just is use of technology, and I don't just mean Zoom, which is the one that everyone's talking about today, but just the idea of technology, just sort of digitizing the legal industry, because every other part of our life is digitized and moves faster and more efficiently for it, and the legal industry feels very sort of pen and paper still. So some speed of digitizing the industry to make it easier when things like this do happen.
Thank you very much. A brilliant discussion. Really interesting to hear from three top panelists. Thank you very much. Thanks for the very engaged community chat as well. We will look at the rest of those questions, and I'll talk to Juliet about how we can provide you with some answers. Love to continue this. Maybe Claire will invite us all to the EY drinks at some point in the next 12 months, and we can just crack on the virtual nightclub.
Right, we'll see what we can do, Nigel.
Yeah, thank you all very, very much for a very insightful and interesting conversation. And with full conscious bias, I'm going to let you know that 2 to 3 Days community is jammed packed with female lawyers who are champing at the bit to pursue their career with some form of degree of flexibility depending on their seniority and chosen department. But we certainly have the women, and they've been on this call today. So
good. Well, please get them to call me, and anyone can call me if you'd like. That would be great.
That'd be brilliant. And thank you all. Stay safe, stay well, and let's have another discussion. All right, take care.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks to the panel.
Bye-bye.